Hola, I'm Claudia Romo Edelman.
And I'm Cynthia Kleinbaum Milner.
And this is a podcast, A la Latina.
The playbook to succeed being your authentic self.
Today, Emma Carrasco, an incredible trailblazer.
She's the Senior Vice President of Corporate Affairs for NBC Universal News Group.
And here are the 3 takeaways for you from this episode.
How she went from an administrative job to the C-suite of one of the most prominent companies in corporate America.
How, in order to build trust, which is essential for a media organization, you really need to represent the perspectives of all your audiences.
And how her company has proven that there is a business case for investing in a new generation of Latino content.
All of that and more here, A la Latina.
Stick around.
Today, an incredible guest, Emma Carrasco.
Emma is the Senior Vice President of Corporate Affairs for the NBC Universal News Group, which includes NBC News, MSNBC, CNBC, Telemundo, and NBCU Local. She was previously Senior Vice President and Global Engagement Officer for the National Geographic Society and served as Chief Marketing Officer and Senior Vice President of Audience Development of NPR.
Over the years, Emma has also contributed her skills to República Havas, Nortel Networks, McDonald's, Univision, and Fleischmann-Hillard.
She's been the recipient of numerous recognitions over the years. Was recently named to the most powerful Latinas list by the Association of Latino Professionals for America and was named a 2023 Rising Star by Latino Leaders magazine.
She's also a board member of Direct Relief, which is a leader in providing medical humanitarian aid to those in need. Its mission is to improve the health and lives of people affected by poverty or emergencies.
And she's also the board member of a really cool company called Toast Ale Ltd., which is a social enterprise that tackles food waste by turning surplus bread into beer.
Emma, welcome. What a bio. Such an honor to have you here.
Thank you both so much for this invitation. It's really so generous of you and what you're doing to shine a spotlight on Latinas and the unique leadership style of Latinas, I think, is a benefit to everyone. So thank you and congratulations for doing this work.
Thank you, Emma, and thank you for being here. Let's dive right in.
Tell us about you, your upbringing. What was the background that made you be who you are today and what you do?
I am a first-generation American. My parents immigrated from Mexico, and they ended up in California, and that's where we were born and raised. And like many first-generation Americans, I was instilled with a love of family, a love of community, and a real dedication to a strong work ethic. And so I think like many of us who grow up as the children of immigrants, we bring something that is really intangible to whatever it is we set our hearts and minds to achieving. And so I am so proud of the family that I come from, and I'm also proud to represent the huge dreams that they had for all of us, for me and my siblings. And everything that I have done in life and in career has been a tribute to my parents. And so that is my highest and most important source of inspiration and strength.
So tell us just a little bit more about that installing of your dream big attitude. Were they like, mija, look at the stars, you can get there?
They had dreams of their own. They had huge dreams, which are the dreams that propelled them to come to this country. And so I always say, have a big dream, have a big, bold, ambitious dream, because that sets you on your path. And the other thing that they showed me was that you just have to put in the work. And you have to dedicate yourself to being educated, to constantly learning, to constantly improving your skills, to exposing yourself to different people, different cultures, different countries, different languages, different foods, different literature. Expose and expand your perspective each and every day. And then the last thing that they taught me, and this is especially true when I think about the summers that I spent in my mother's hometown in Durango. She was in this little pueblito called Garame de Abajo, which was next to Garame de Arriba.
Wow, I never. Is this a joke or it's for real?
It's a for real name. You know,
wow.
These ranchitos in Mexico, they have these names. And these were fierce women who lived off of the land. They were so resourceful, so creative with what they had. They were generous of spirit, and they worked and they toiled all day long. And at the end of the day, you sat around a circle and you told the stories of the day. And these women, they laughed and they were funny and witty. And so it taught me the importance of taking your work seriously, but not necessarily taking yourself too seriously. And they taught me the importance of having a love of life, the importance of laughter, the importance of leading with joy and optimism, because that gets you through a lot. And as you go through building a career like the kinds we have, the ability to laugh is really important.
And the ability to finish every day and every cycle with a circle of women around you that can, that can share their day so that we can share the access code.
Exactly.
Fantastic.
Exactly.
So just going back to your family, what you're saying, or I hear you saying that being connected, having a network, asking people for their perspective. If I hear you talking and I don't know anything about you, I would think, oh, she must have had all these people around her that already had walked the walk. But since your family came from Mexico, you probably didn't have an uncle or your parents to ask them, how do I climb the ladder? Which job should I take? What career should I even study? What was your playbook to make decisions, to know what you were supposed to do if your family and your immediate network wasn't there to guide you?
And was with a ranchito.
Yes.
Exactly, right. Well, first of all, I didn't even know that there was a ladder, right? Yeah. I didn't even know that a corporate ladder was a thing. I was lucky enough to get an education, right? Like many of our parents, that was really important.
Yeah.
And so in the process of trying to figure it out, I knew that I needed to graduate and I knew that I needed a job. Yeah. Right? That was just step one. But there was no one, we were all kind of in the same boat, and there was no one really to show us the path. So we were showing each other the way. And I remember my very first job was a secretary. That was the title. I was a secretary for a small public relations agency. And the agency was acquired by Fleischmann-Hillard. And it was when I got to Fleischmann-Hillard that I realized, there were all these other jobs that people grew into. You started as an assistant account executive, and then if you did that job well, you became an account executive, and then an account director, and then a vice president, et cetera. And it was there that I was fortunate enough to have a boss who was Latino. And that set me on my path. His name was Steve Moya, and he was my first and most important role model because he understood me culturally, and he was ascending in his own career and willing, if I worked hard enough, if I met the right standards of excellence, to help me move along as well. And so that first mentor was everything to me. And I don't know that I would have had the connection had he not been a Latino.
So he was a mentor and then a sponsor, from what you're saying, because he kind of took you with him.
That's
so
right.
Steve Moya?
Yes.
Steve Moya, thank you. And everyone else, be a Steve Moya.
1,000%. And we have heard, and I have to tell you, after just listening to this, I know you for a number of years now, and I have always respected you and admired you, but now just my admiration grew 1,000 times deeper. Thank you so much for sharing your story. And I do think that for a lot of our guests, there's similar roles that their family have played, which is one is emphasis on education. And number two, either don't limit the dreams or at least encourage the big dreams. And I think that for all of us that now are parents and can play that role model, be the Steve Moya and be the parent that is, focusing on the big things. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you, of course.
Okay, so you have a title that I don't understand what it means. It sounds legal, but I don't think it's legal, corporate affairs. So can you tell us what your job is?
Well, I'm so lucky to be able to work where I work, which is the NBC Universal News Group, which, as you said, is a pretty vast portfolio of news brands and shows and platforms. And there is value in having that portfolio, but it is magnified when you're able to connect the dots across the portfolio. Mm-hmm. And so that's a lot of what I do as head of corporate affairs for the NBC Universal News Group. And then the other thing that I do is really develop relationships with the communities that we serve and the communities that we need to represent. And so Claudia is a perfect example of a leader with whom we really identified was important to share what we were doing, because we respect the work that Claudia is doing, and we also think that what we're doing should be recognized and should be understood. And so it's a two-way street, right? Any relationship is, and we really believe in the power of partnership. And so a lot of what I do is establish those relationships and work those partnerships so that there is mutual gain in the kind of stories that we tell and the kind of storytelling that we put out into the world.
Before we started shooting, you explained this to me a little bit, and it just reminded me of almost every interview we've made where our guests have said, Latinas are great at connecting people, at getting people to collaborate. So I can't imagine anyone doing this job that is not Latina, Like I mean, the way that you grew up probably prepared you for this role. And every company, no matter the size, I think needs this role, somebody that connects the dots, that gets people to collaborate, that gets teams to add value to each other, because in big companies you can see how much money gets wasted for not having those connections, but even small companies, everybody's running around doing their thing.
Yes.
So everybody needs an Emma Carrasco.
But I do think that you have, as a company, generated more trust, particularly in a very distrusted environment of networks and media organizations, with having so many properties that add up to, I believe in this company. I can work in this company. I can see the different properties. So well done for connecting those dots. So tell us more about your background. Tell us more about, like a little bit of your going through the different companies and how you've been leading marketing teams and audience development for some of the most iconic American companies, including NPR, National Geographic. So how was it for you to work in those environments? And what were the decisions that you had to make, or the skills that you had to develop that helped you position yourself for the roles that you had and that you currently have?
Yeah, I have been very lucky in that I have been able to work with organizations that have always been forward-looking and have always identified where the next area of growth was going to come from. And they understood the importance of nurturing that consumer segment or that community. And so whether it was at Fleischmann-Hillard and working on the Anheuser-Busch account, this was way back when Hispanic marketing was nascent, but we had a real strategy.
Oh, so when you were working on the Latino segment, because these Latino...
Yes.
It was very early.
Yes,
it was
very early. And so that foundation of saying, here is a consumer segment that another brand isn't paying attention to, and we're going to pay attention to it. And so the skill, the cultural understanding, the linguistic ability to communicate to a new consumer segment is what really provided a whole new area of advancement for someone like me. And so that was Fleischmann-Hillard. And then I went to Univision, where Univision said, we now actually need to represent a U.S. Latino experience in our content and in our programming. So we know that we have really great telenovelas, but they don't necessarily represent the experience of someone who is now in this country. And so being able to develop a whole slate of content that represented a U.S. Latino experience, introducing a noticiero that was about being a Latino in Los Angeles or New York or Chicago, right? Like, so all of that. And then that...
So much that it flipped the script, and now Univision, it's the launch of Televisa.
And the same thing at McDonald's. McDonald's was an early mover in connecting with communities of color. So at McDonald's, I was responsible for developing Hispanic outreach as well as outreach to African Americans. And that was huge, right? And again, it just provided a lane that no one else was in. And so I had an opportunity to really design that with management, and it was really great, very, very early on. And then that led to an opportunity to test my skills still in the same culture and language, but not in the United States, right? So what was happening in the Caribbean and Latin America? And a company like Nortel Networks recognized that this was a fast-growing part of the world that could accelerate their growth, particularly when it came to cellular technology and wireless technology. So that was another door opened because I had skill that was related to the function that was necessary, but also because I had cultural and linguistic skill. And that was really, really fantastic.
So cultural and linguistic skills seems to be your superpower.
Yeah, it really is, and it allowed me to go to parts of organizations that were just getting off the ground, and that was always really exciting. So being able to build that, form what that strategy was going to be, and then leading teams that would execute it.
I mean, I feel like you have either a crystal ball, you were like the OG of diverse audience development, and one has to wonder how much you were in the right place at the right time, or how much you drove, because I'm sure you had to convince sometimes those organizations that it was the right thing to do, the investment.
Well, I think it goes back to my formation, right? That you always had to put in the work and you had to be prepared. Because what is it? That luck is when opportunity meets preparation.
Exactly.
And the opportunity was there.
Yeah.
And I was prepared to take advantage of the opportunity.
Exactly.
And I think that's a really important lesson that so many of us have incorporated into our lives.
And so did you graduate from the Latino affairs into now a more general?
Nortel Networks was the first one that gave me a global opportunity. So after I led marketing and comms for the Caribbean and Latin America, I eventually became head of global advertising for Nortel Networks. And so that was just a whole new scope that was far beyond U.S. Hispanic, and it was great. But U.S. Hispanic is what got me there, right? It's so clear to me that was the reason that I was able to step into that role. And from there, I went to República Havas. So I went, back to multicultural, and then I went to NPR, which was everything. And NPR was also an opportunity to help bring in a new generation of public radio audience. And that generation, because it was younger, was just naturally going to be more diverse. And so the content had to reflect that experience in the U.S.
And I would love to role model, I think that the transition between understanding general market, Latino market, and the relationship between both. And also if you put the global perspective, but it is not, when you're talking to Latino market, it's not only targeting Latino market. Modelo is the #1 beer in the country, and it's not drunk only by Latinos. We're not doing all that. We're not bumping the consumption on our own. It's everybody wants to taste something that is Latino in the beer.
Right.
And how does that translate the Latino market to the general, to the general mainstream? If you want, that's for me, if you're listening and if you're curious, I think that you have to understand the operations of your company in order to get to the leadership of your company. And when it comes to marketing, you want to make sure that you understand both, and that it is because you are Latina, not despite you are Latina, that you're able to understand and open new markets.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So making Latino content mainstream. How do you feel about where we are today, from like creating Hispanic content only for Latinos to making it more mainstream? And if you can also talk to us about the decision of making the show from John Leguizamo
Dos America.
Which is mainstream, right? Everybody is for everybody's consumption. So how do you feel? Where are we? Are we in the right track? Do you feel like we need to accelerate it? How is the masses consuming content that is meant to showcase Latinos in the U.S.?
I think to answer the fundamental question, I think we have made so much progress based on where we started, where we've been. There's still room to grow. I think it comes down to two things. Building trust with audiences for a news organization is essential. Trust is our currency. The next thing that it has to be is excellent. Just excellent, high quality content. And so for us, the way that we build trust with audiences is ensuring that we represent all the communities we serve, that we represent them across all dimensions of diversity: gender, race, geography, socioeconomic background, and diversity of perspective. And that doesn't happen by accident, Claudia. The reason that I joined the NBC Universal News Group was because Cesar Conde was chairman. And I knew his commitment to excellence. I knew his commitment to building trust with audiences and his ability to be bold. And what we have achieved is pretty remarkable. The numbers speak for themselves. NBC Universal News Group has to deliver business results. And so we are there in terms of audience, in terms of representation, in terms of performance on all metrics. And so what it has shown us, and we say this all the time, the playbook is here. Please, industry, use it, because we need everyone to do this, is you make a commitment to build trust with your audience. And when Latino audiences see something like Leguizamo Des America, they see themselves reflected. But non-Latino audiences also appreciate the excellence of that content, the high quality production that is
entertainment.
And it has been the highest rated show in its time slot on MSNBC. Full stop. Full stop. So it tells you that excellence in content is excellence in content. And John would be the first person to tell you that. John certainly wants to represent our community and has done so well. But
for so long.
But Leguizamo Des America has been greenlit for a season 2 because it delivered. It delivered on audience. And it has also represented the diversity of the Latino community. So you can do 2 things or 3 things at once.
And I have to say, one of the other things we always hear is do it well. Take the big bet. And you not only did great content, you promoted it really well. I saw the banners in the planes, I saw it in the taxis, I saw the promotion, I talked to your marketing guy and he showed me the numbers, and you invested in Latino content the way that you would invest in other pieces of content, fully. And that is why it's a full circle. You have to take the big bet, you have to do it well, and you have to do it big. In order to do that. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Well, it was just a very important investment that MSNBC Films and NBC News Studios was going to make. It was a big bet. And when you make big bets, you do everything you need to do to ensure its success. And so our ability to understand the importance of community, the importance of partnerships, the importance of opinion leaders, and make those connections in addition to broader marketing and outreach. It was really that combination. And John played a critical role in promoting the work because he wanted it to succeed. Yeah. We wanted it to succeed. We were all committed to its success. And that I think is absolutely essential when you have this kind of work. But beyond that, it's a situation that we have now, and I am so proud that across this portfolio, we have more Latino news anchors than any other news organization. And that happens in response to, again, a bold ambition that Cesar set for the organization, a North Star, and the fact that we have so many excellent journalists that exist in the field.
Yeah.
And so you look at Tom Llamas, Ana Cabrera, Jose Diaz-Balay, they're excellent journalists. And they also happen to be Latino and committed, very committed to it.
Tell us, what does it do to work under a Latino leader? Like, what does it do to the organization? What does it do in general? How does it translate? How does it, how does it open up? How does it change its culture compared to other leaders? And how does it work for you, being a Latina, to have a Latino leader that it's putting the Latino agenda also on the table?
I will say, for me personally and professionally, having been in so many situations where I have been the first or the only, or the first and only, right? And the responsibility that comes with that, it is an enormous source of just personal and professional pride.
I love it.
When you walk into the office every day and you know that there is someone that shares your values, that shares your commitment, and that is so committed to excellence and performance that you're going to be able to do your best job ever. And to have a leader set that tone for the entire organization has shifted our culture. It is a culture that is so inclusive that people say, welcome to the family, and people are committed to performing at their absolute best.
And so he's leading a la Latina.
I think you could say that.
Right. I love that, because if he's leading as a family and everybody feels included, that's very, that's very Latino. Right. That's very...
It is. He does have very high standards. And that, I think, is something that I also identify with, because I think our parents also had high standards for us. Like, you just have to work twice as hard, and you have to always deliver. And that is something that is very familiar to, I think, Latinos in the organization.
And I suppose that working as a Latino under a Latino, that as a Latina under a Latino that appreciates your culture and is more inclusive, allows you to be your true self by far more, and therefore you can perform better.
Yeah, it really is. He has set a standard of excellence and performance that inspires everybody.
Okay. We're going to start the fan club of Cesar Conde.
Let's have more Cesar Condes.
Yes. Yeah. There's two initiatives that I know are very important to you, and we'd love to learn more about them. One of them is Inspiring America Inspiration List, and the other one is the Change Makers, Women Transforming Business.
Yes.
Can you tell us about them?
Absolutely. Inspiring America, the Inspiration List, is a new annual list of people across America who are doing really inspirational things. It is rooted in a regular segment on NBC Nightly News. And so they started just ending the newscast with something uplifting, because sometimes the news of the day can be rough.
Yeah, sometimes.
And so doing something a little uplifting. So we took that closing segment and we expanded it. And this is an example of bringing together all parts of the organization. And so NBC News, CNBC, MSNBC, Telemundo have all contributed to the creation of the annual inspiration list, Inspiring America, the 2022 or 2023, and soon to be 2024 inspiration list. And it showcases the best of communities across these brands. And so CNBC will have an inspiring business leader. MSNBC might have an inspiring community leader. NBC News might have an inspiring entertainer. And so you bring all of that together. And I'm so proud because the list has been diverse from its inception. And in this past year, we included Eva Longoria, we've included Rita Moreno, Lin-Manuel Miranda, and they've told their story to the rest of America, which is really, really, it's great. All their stories are inspiring. So that's the inspiration list. It brings all of our brands together and celebrates something that is truly uplifting in our country.
And how much we need that.
Exactly.
Yes, optimism.
That's
and
exactly
how much
right.
we need that.
And the CNBC Changemakers list, this one I'm very excited about because it's brand new. And this will be an annual list. The first one will be published.
What is it called?
CNBC Changemakers. And it celebrates 40 women who are transforming their organization, whether it's a business or a philanthropy, to do something really impactful. And it is rooted in a book that CNBC's Julia Borstein wrote, which is called How Women Lead. And what she found when she interviewed women leaders is that we lead from a place of empathy, of vulnerability, and the importance of bringing community together to solve problems. So communal thinking. And I think that's something that we can all identify with. And she also noted that it's only about 10% of CEOs of Fortune 500 companies who are women. We know that's even lower for Latinas. We know that she says that about 3% of all venture capital funding goes to women-led startups, and that something needs to change in that equation. And so by shining a spotlight on change makers who are women and who are leading their organizations through transformation, we think that it can be a source of, again, inspiration to change the makeup of leadership at the very top of Fortune 500 companies.
It's like, I feel like it aligns very well with why we do this podcast, which is, if you don't see yourself reflected, it's hard to imagine that you can get there. There's all these stereotypes that we need to break. So when you put a role model in the spotlight.
I absolutely believe that change makers are a strategic part of any social change that you want to do. Because if people feel that it is cool and celebrated to be vested in the future of your community, there's more and more people that will be part of that change. While if you see that as a responsibility for someone else, the government, we're so, like whatever it is, then you're never gonna get involved, and therefore change is harder. So I'm 100% for change makers, and we can't wait. It's a fantastic advisory council that has been organized. It includes 2 Latinos, myself, and Oscar Munoz, the former CEO of United Airlines. I love that. Yeah. I love that. We have a similar idea of doing it only for Hispanics, like a Hispanic change maker. Fantastic. That we're launching with Ashoka. Yeah. Anyways, so it is great, and we should actually join forces in saying why is it important to be a change maker. I would like everybody to have it in their title, like I'm an activist, I'm an advocate, I'm a change maker, because that's the way in which I think that we're going to generate that. You definitely are, Claudia. No, but like every one of us should feel that that's really cool to do. Yeah. I wanted to go back a little bit to what we were talking about of being yourself and being able to feel proud when you come to work. So now you're in the paradise of being, like in an organization that is inclusive, that has one of the highest ranking Latino leaders, that has bold goals, but also an understanding that if you don't reflect the communities you serve, you're not going to generate trust. And if you generate trust, you're going to have an audience forever. And therefore, you can start producing really successful content through your life, being a Latina. Has it been a pro? Has it been a con? When were there bruises? When did you have to dial down and hide it? When did you, put it forward? The good, the bad, and the ugly. Yeah, I will say that as I started, because
I was the first. I was the only. It was terrifying. How was I going to learn? Yeah. Who was going to teach me? And I just had to dig really deep and try to figure it out on my own until I met Steve Moya. And even then, entering a room when you didn't have the wealth of experience that others who had entered the room had, boy, like not knowing how and when to ask a question, to contribute an idea, all of that. I went through a period in my career early on where it was really challenging because I just didn't have the playbook. Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, I can either continue being afraid or I can be okay with making some mistakes. And I said, like, Steve probably made some mistakes along the way, and so I was able to talk to him about it. I talked to my parents, and not everything they did was exactly right. I said, oh, well, okay, so like I guess making some mistakes is part of the journey. And I know how resourceful Latinas are. I know that we have the ability to look at things from all these different perspectives. And I thought, like, I am an American. I also feel very Mexican. And so my ability to have different views on a challenge or an opportunity, I think really helped me because I wasn't siloed in my view of the world. I couldn't be because I'm bilingual and I'm bicultural. And that, once I recognized the superpower that is, I was able to then take advantage of all of these opportunities that presented themselves. But first, I went through a period where I was terrified and I just didn't know how to make it or if I was going to make it.
We've heard some of our guests having like pretty, I guess, traumatic experiences with being told with that accent, you're not going to get anywhere. You don't really look Latina. You're lucky. Was there anything regarding being Latina that you have a last name that, I mean, it pretty much says I'm Latina, right, but not everybody knows your last name. Like, right, did you ever have to like very consciously act differently than the way that you were raised? Like, I can tell you in Mexico, I started my career 25, almost 30 years in Mexico. I used to arrive to the office and kiss everyone in my area, right? Like, you arrive to the office and you say hi by kissing everyone. I showed up here and I realized that people didn't really like me kissing them. So that's a silly example, but do you have examples of things that you actually had to like dial down?
You know, I didn't. But one of my earliest experiences of really not knowing the code was actually when I was in the 3rd grade. And the teacher, who was white, we were out on the playground and she asked me to go get her pocketbook. I had no idea what that was. I thought,
I don't have no idea what it is.
It's like the money word, no, or no?
It's a purse.
It's a
purse.
I guess we still don't know.
I had no idea what a pocketbook was. Uh-huh. And I was afraid to ask. Yes. And I went back to the classroom and I said, like, this is a book. I don't know what a pocket is. Like a pocket, like in my pants. Yeah. Like, what was a pocketbook?
Yeah.
And I didn't know what to look for. And that taught me, after I got in a lot of trouble for not finding the right thing, that you have to ask if you don't know.
Yeah.
That was a very early, like, cultural experience of dissonance because she came from a culture and I came from another culture and we didn't speak the same language.
Ariana Stollard spoke about it in the context of work on how when everybody is white American and you bring somebody it doesn't have to be Latino, it can be somebody from a different country. There's so many words that are embedded in the American corporate world that people that come in feel just like you felt with a pocketbook. Like, I don't understand half of the things. I'm just going to write down and later after the meeting, I'm going to have to ask somebody what these things mean. And we should make it more people
Yes.
should be comfortable just asking the question.
Exactly. Yeah.
But there's one thing that I have to say I've noticed, like from the years that I know you, which is, and it gave me a lot of approach with you. I felt that you were very approachable. You're very serious and you're a corporate leader in all senses. And I remember when I met you, I was very impressed. And all of a sudden you laughed. And you were like, ha, ha, ha. And it was like really like laughing like a Latina. And so there was like, like freely and fully. And it was not like, It was like really being yourself.
Right. And I just had dinner in Los Angeles with a group of guys that I graduated college with. And all Latinos, right, all coming first in their families to go to college, et cetera. And from my earliest days, my friends, my colleagues, my schoolmates, they know me for my laugh, and that I have never held it back, because it goes, I listened to my grandmother and my family elders in Garame de Abajo, and after a long day sitting around the circle and the stories,
Talking about Garame de Arriba. And you're like,
exactly, and the joy that brought them. And I said, I am never going to lose that.
I remember going to your parties, your corporate events, and so on, and there's a bunch of people, 100 people, and all of a sudden there's one laughter that is like, and I was like, oh, Emma is there, like across 100 people.
Yeah.
And I love that you're able to do that. So just like on the Latinidad, so you said you never had to dial it down, and that's incredible, and you were able to probably navigate it really well. Has it helped you? Like being Latina, has it helped you to stand out, like when you were not doing only the Latino market?
Right.
And what parts?
Right. I think because I was always so proud of where I came from and who I was, and doing things to honor my parents, that if I dialed that back, I would be doing them a dishonor. And so I found a path in corporate America that appreciated that, so that when brands wanted to understand this Hispanic market, I was ready. I was prepared, because I never walked away from it. And it was a source of strength and pride. And I thought, this is what is going to be my entree to a corporate career. And I did that on the agency side, I did that on the corporate side, and I've done that on the media side. And so it has really allowed me to express my unique view of the world and my perspective on growth and opportunity for all sides of that stool, right? That we call consumer marketing or consumer outreach.
Oscar Munoz, that speaks about having an Atic moment where he realized that because he was a Latino, he was such a great CEO. And he never wanted to claim it before because he was like, it's not because I'm a Latino. Don't put that stick on me to say that I'm a Latino, and that's why I got to be the CEO of United. I was the CEO of United because of my perseverance, by my qualities, my performance. And then after, he said, I had an Atic moment when I claimed my Latinidad. And I do think that a lot of Latinas that make it to corporate America in senior positions do not have that Atic moment yet. Seems to me that you had it when you were like a pocketbook moment, but you have seen that.
Yeah, I have used it to create a career.
Yeah.
And that to me is again just really rewarding. The only thing that I would say I at times had to dial back was being a woman, because if you're in the corporate environment in the 80s and 90s, you're trying to dress like a guy, you're trying to act like a guy, and that was like an out-of-body experience, right? But I remember wearing the suits with the shoulder pads and even a tie, and that's what you did, because you were trying to emulate other leaders, and those leaders were largely men.
Yeah, playing the script of a man.
Yeah.
You were given the script that in order to be successful, you had to be like the man. And I think that Latinos, we are giving the script of someone else. we're acting and trying to be someone like the other people, but not being ourselves. And so we believe that there are characteristics of Latinos that we should flip the script, and instead of hiding them, just like using them and realize that they are not, those stereotypes are actually assets, like your loud laughter is an asset to get people, feeling that you're approachable. Are there any values of the Latino community that you wish that we would understand better so that we can flip the script, both for Latinos to be able to feel that they're their superpowers, or for companies to be able to understand Latinos better and therefore appreciate what we bring to the table as assets?
Yeah, I think as a first-generation American, as a daughter of immigrants, I don't think anyone can outwork our work ethic. I think our work ethic is a superpower, and I think we do it because we want to make our families and our communities proud, and that, to me, is a really distinguishing characteristic. I think our commitment to being excellent is, I think, another superpower. And it is what allows corporations to tap into a source of pride that will help uncover new market opportunity. And I think that being at least bilingual and at least bicultural is a superpower as the world has become so interconnected. And I think having cultural and linguistic skills is something that allows companies to enter new markets at a pace that may be faster than others who don't embrace an employee base that brings that to the table. And so those are some of the things that I think are really unique about what Latinos and Latinas are able to offer corporate America.
We haven't spoken at all about working hard as a flip the script. And I still remember, I haven't heard it that much lately, but I remember before, like a few years ago, people still had this idea that Mexicans take siestas. So you would say, yeah, when I was in Mexico, oh, your family takes a siesta, right? Like 2 hours after lunch. Like, I mean, we work so hard. This idea that Latinos don't work hard and that we are the bad guy in the movie or the lazy guy in the picture with a sombrero sitting on the street. Like, let's flip that script, because we really do work hard and are, twice as hard.
Yes. And the other piece of working hard is that working hard doesn't mean that you cannot work smart and lead. So we cannot be only understanding work hard as in labor, like physical labor.
Yeah.
So I love that idea. Let's explore more about like how do we bring to the table for corporations how working hard can really bring value to your organization. So we think we're making it every time more. Every time there's more Emma Carrascos, every time more there's more and more of us. But we want to make it in half the time. Mm-hmm. So what advice would you give yourself if you would be 30 years old, which ideally can go and talk to our audience on, like these are the things that you don't have to wait 20 years to get to there?
I think that if I were 30 years old, I wish that I would have been able to continue my formal education. I wish I would have had the time, the resources to get an MBA. I believe that higher education is incredibly important and distinguishing. And so I spent time building a career that may have taken me less time had I had been able to continue my formal education. And so I think our ability to continue to pursue education at the highest level is one of the keys to accelerating our ability to lead.
Yeah, I mean, I get questions about MBAs a lot because I took my 2 years of going to do an MBA, and I mean, it changed my life. It really gave me so much perspective. Like, it showed me how other industries work. Mm-hmm. It really teaches you how to be a CEO, because you're like in an environment where you're with very smart people. Just anyway, I strongly recommend that people continue their formal education.
I do too. You end up getting all of that, even if you don't have an MBA.
Later.
But if the question is how do we accelerate, that's
Go MBA.
That's what I would recommend.
I would kill myself if I don't ask you this. You're the head of corporate affairs of a news organization. How does it look like in an election year? What is the advice for young Latinas to be attentive to in a world of misinformation, disinformation? What are we looking for? What are we looking at?
It is, I think, one of the most challenging and consequential times of our generation, Claudia. I really believe that. And you have to be able to identify news and information that you can trust, because we are surrounded by an ecosystem where anyone can inform, but it's not necessarily backed up by standards or practices. And so we go through great lengths to build this trust with audiences because we think that it is so consequential for Americans to have reliable information about who is going to be the next leader of this country. And we have to present, and we do, all sides of the spectrum. So I'm coming here to you today from the Republican national presidential debate that we hosted in Miami. And through the quality of our journalists, we were able to have a debate that was substantive, where the candidates actually got to explain where they stood on really important issues of our time. And I think that doing the work to pay attention to that is an obligation that we have as citizens of this country. And so I would say to young Latinas to do your homework, to find trusted sources of information, and to exercise your right to vote, because it is essential to our democracy. And so we're trying to do our part, and citizens and voters of this country need to do their part. And together, if we both do our parts, we exercise this experiment that we call a democracy. And we are so fortunate to be in a country where that is our aspiration.
But in such a polarized environment, and like where does Latino also fall? When I am glad that the coverage will be more diverse and more inclusive, and making sure that all of us are getting the information that we need in order to get that information. But it's really challenging because it's the polarization where we are, and where Latinos fall in that.
And Latinos fall on the spectrum of political choice. And we have to respect that, and we have to reflect that. Americans fall on the spectrum of political choice, and we have to represent all of it. And that's what we're committed to doing. But I would say that as a responsible potential voter or a responsible voter, and if you're eligible to vote, you should register to vote, and you should vote. That is also really important.
And you go great lengths to make sure that there's more and more voter registration for the Latino community.
Yes.
And I do think that we should say it. Here at La Latina, we believe that if you want to make it in life, you have to actually make your voice heard. So go and register yourself and make your voice heard, whatever it is, don't be exactly what we just said. Don't be lazy, don't be scared, be bold, and be hardworking, and go and register and vote.
That's exactly right.
Last question.
Yes.
Who else should we have? Another Latina that you think she would be a great guest?
I love Julissa Marenco. She is the Chief Marketing Officer for the Smithsonian, for all of the Smithsonian.
Oh, I met her. She's so awesome.
Okay,
You're right.
let's do it.
She's a former White House fellow. she's remarkable.
Okay, we'll invite her.
Emma, is there anything else that you would like to deliver to our audience? Anything else that you would like to share with us?
I just really want to thank you both for this conversation. It's felt like talking with friends, and it is so important that we be able to see ourselves and hear ourselves, and what you're doing is so valued and so important. So I again just really want to express my gratitude to you for having me on, and for your commitment to make sure that all audiences understand that when you do things a la Latina, that great things can happen.
Exactly.
Absolutely. I learned so much. I grew my admiration for you dramatically in this podcast.
Qué linda.
Emma Carrasco, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you both.
Emma Carrasco,
Leading a la Latina.